$1,312,047. I placed the accountant's report on the polished restaurant table, watching the color drain from my mother's face. That's how much you've stolen from me over the past 5 years. The elegant brunch setting around us fades into background noise as I focus solely on my parents' reactions. My father's jaw clenches, that familiar twitch beneath his left eye signaling the rage building beneath his carefully maintained facade. Eleanor, please, my mother hisses, glancing nervously at nearby diners. This is hardly the place. It's exactly the place, Martha. I cut her off, my voice eerily calm despite the storm raging inside me. Public. Witnesses. No chance for your usual theatrics. My sister Olivia slides into the seat beside me, right on cue. The shock on our parents' faces at her appearance would be comical if the situation weren't so devastating. We've seen the trust documents, Olivia says quietly. And Aunt Helen told us everything. My father's expensive watch catches the light as he reaches for his water. The same watch I paid for, believing their desperate pleas about medical bills. The same lies that kept me in a cramped apartment while they enjoyed golf memberships and spa weekends. We're your parents, my mother begins, tears already forming. Her performance is impeccable, honed through decades of manipulation. After everything we've sacrificed? The word escapes me as a laugh, sharp and bitter. Like the Caribbean cruise last spring? Or the new patio furniture you told me was second-hand? My father leans forward, his voice dropping to that threatening whisper I've known since childhood. Now you listen here. No, Richard. I open the folder wider. You listen. The fraud ends today. The money stops. All of it. What happens next unfolds like a scene from a movie I'm watching rather than living. My mother lunging for the documents, the table flipping, water and mimosas creating a spectacular spray across the restaurant's pristine floor. Her scream of rage, my father's face contorted in fury, the shocked gasps from Sunday brunchers around us. And through it all, I feel nothing but calm. 5 years of power they held over me, broken by nothing more than the truth. As the restaurant manager rushes over, I stand, smoothing my dress. I think we're done here, I say quietly. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. I turn to leave, Olivia's hand in mine, when my father's voice follows us. If you do this, you're no longer our daughters. Olivia pauses, looking back one last time. No, we stopped being your daughters the moment you chose greed over love. Outside in the bright morning sunshine, I take my first full breath in what feels like years. My phone buzzes with a message from my boss. Your office is ready. VP title looks good on the door. I show Olivia the message, watching a smile break through her tears. They tried to keep us small, she says softly. They failed. I finish, deleting my mother's incoming call without reading it. Some bridges need to burn. Flashback at the beginning. The smell of burnt toast used to be my first warning. 5 years ago, when I moved back to help my parents get back on their feet, Martha's passive-aggressive breakfast ritual became the soundtrack to my mornings. Burnt toast, clattering pans, the aggressive whisking of eggs, all carefully timed to wake me before my 5 a.m. alarm. I was 32 then, had graduated top of my class in finance, and was making excellent progress in my career. When my father called to tell me he'd been unfairly dismissed from the insurance firm where he'd worked for 25 years, I didn't question it. We just need a little help until things turn around, my mother had said, voice trembling. The medical bills are piling up, and with your father's age, finding new work is. I remember how her voice trailed off, how my father stared silently at his hands that had always seemed so strong when I was a child, now appearing weathered and defeated. That night, I called my sister Olivia. They've always been there for us, I reasoned. It's our turn to help them. Olivia, 3 years younger and working as an elementary school teacher, agreed but couldn't contribute much financially. I'll visit every weekend, she promised instead. I found an apartment 30 minutes from their house, small but affordable, allowing me to cover their mortgage, utilities, and supposed medical expenses. I transferred to the local branch of my investment firm, taking a lateral move rather than the promotion I'd been working toward. It's temporary, I told myself. Until they get back on their feet. That was 5 years ago. Childhood flashback, the pattern begins. My earliest memory of my parents' relationship with money comes from when I was 7 years old. We lived in a charming colonial in an upscale neighborhood. Not the most expensive house on the block, but certainly respectable. Dad had just received a promotion at the insurance company, and Mom was hosting a dinner party to celebrate. Eleanor, come help me set the table with the good china, she'd called, her voice tense with excitement. I remember watching her arrange flowers in expensive crystal vases while Dad uncorked wine that he'd spent an hour selecting from the liquor store. Is this all for Dad's new job? I'd asked, carefully placing forks beside bone china plates that usually live behind glass cabinet doors. It's for our guests to see that we're doing well, Mom had corrected me, adjusting a napkin I'd placed slightly askew. Appearances matter, Eleanor. People treat you according to how they see you. The dinner party had been a success, lots of adult laughter and compliments on our home. The next morning, I overheard Mom and Dad arguing in hushed tones about the credit card bill. We could not have the party, Richard, Mom had hissed. What would people think? Later that week, when I'd asked for new soccer cleats for the upcoming season, Dad had explained that money was tight right now. I wore my two small cleats for another season, enduring blisters and cramped toes, while our home continued to host immaculate dinner parties. It was my first lesson in the Hartfield family priorities: appearances first, necessities second. At my parents' home 3 weeks ago, Eleanor, the least you could do is come down and eat with us before work. I pulled myself from bed, muscles aching from yesterday's double shift. The wooden stairs creaked under my feet as I descended, each step a reminder that this house needed repairs I couldn't afford while covering three people's expenses. Morning, sweetheart. My father didn't look up from his tablet, the same tablet I'd paid for last Christmas. He wore a new golf shirt I'd pretended not to notice on last month's credit card statement. You're looking thin. My mother pushed a plate of blackened toast toward me. Have you been eating properly in that awful apartment of yours? The concern in her voice might have seemed genuine to an outsider, but I recognized it for what it was. Another subtle dig at my living situation, another implied criticism of my choices. As if living in a modest apartment while supporting them was something to be ashamed of. My apartment is fine, Mom, I said, and I eat just fine. If you'd let us help you find a better place. On what money? The words slipped out before I could stop them. The kitchen went silent. Dad finally looked up, face darkening. You know we're doing our best to get back on track, he said. These things take time. I swallowed the bitter laugh, threatening to escape. Time. 5 years of time. 60 months of watching my savings disappear while they posted Facebook photos from restaurants I couldn't afford to eat at. I need to get ready for work. I pushed away from the table, toast untouched. Always running away from conversations, Mom sighed loudly, just like when we try to talk about you finding someone. 32 and not even dating. Her words hit their mark, as they always did. My lack of a relationship was another failure in their eyes, another way I wasn't measuring up to their expectations. What they never acknowledged was how exhausting it was to work full-time while managing their finances, how little energy I had left for dating after making sure their needs were met. As I headed back upstairs, I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. Dark circles under my eyes, hair hastily pulled back, wearing the same blouse I'd worn twice this week because I hadn't had time to do laundry. When had I become this person? When had I stopped caring about my own appearance, my own needs? The irony wasn't lost on me. The daughter of parents obsessed with appearances had become someone who barely recognized herself in the mirror. The discovery. I was halfway up the stairs when I heard the house phone ring. Mom's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, but the old house carried sound like a megaphone. Eliza? Yes, the fun money came through. No, she has no idea. Direct deposit makes it so easy. I froze, one foot suspended in midair. Richard's been dying to try that new golf club. Of course, we'll take you both. Eleanor's too busy working to check her statements anyway. You should see how she lives, in that tiny apartment, while we. Yes, exactly. We raised her. She owes us this much at least. My hands started shaking. The world tilted sideways as years of exhaustion, sacrifice, and blind trust crystallized into something ugly and sharp. I gripped the banister to steady myself, the wood creaking under my white-knuckled grasp. Did you see those photos I sent of the new patio furniture? Mom continued, laughing. She thinks we got it secondhand. I know she's always been so trusting, just like when she was little. A memory flashed through my mind. Age 8, proudly giving my birthday money to my father because the car was sick and needed medicine. He'd bought golf clubs that weekend. I'd seen them in the trunk and asked about them. Just borrowed from a friend at work, he'd explained. I'd believed him. Just like I'd believed every story they told me for the past 5 years. I leaned against the wall, phone already in hand, banking app open. 5 years of statements I'd skimmed, trusting their desperate pleas for help. 5 years of just until things turn around. The transactions told a different story. Regular transfers to accounts I didn't recognize, purchases at high-end stores, restaurant charges that definitely weren't from the discount diners they claimed to frequent. We'll see you Saturday then. Mom's voice floated up. Richard's so excited about the new clubs. Yes, yes. Eleanor will never notice the charge. She's been such a good girl about all this. My vision blurred, not from tears. I was too angry for tears. This was the clarity of fury, sharp and cold and perfect. I felt something inside me break and reform, stronger and harder than before. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My heart pounded so loudly in my ears that for a moment, it drowned out even my mother's laughter. The hallway seemed to narrow and expand. The floral wallpaper I'd helped Mom pick out 3 years ago, another expense I'd covered, suddenly garish and mocking. The bedroom door closed behind me with a soft click. I sat at my old desk, the one where I used to do homework, where I'd signed the papers to become their financial guardian, where I'd written countless checks to keep them afloat. My phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. Mom says, "You're being difficult about breakfast again. Why can't you just be grateful for everything they do for you?" I stared at the message, at the years of manipulation suddenly visible in high definition. The guilt trips, the gaslighting, the careful construction of a reality where I was simultaneously their savior and their ungrateful child. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a new spreadsheet. Column A, date. Column B, amount. Column C, their story. Column D, the truth. It was time to start keeping receipts. Flashback the pattern. Looking back, I should have seen the pattern. My parents had always lived beyond their means, a trait I'd watched my grandparents criticize but never truly understood until now. My father came from a wealthy family, but as the youngest of 3 siblings, he'd always felt overshadowed. His older brother Thomas had inherited the family business, while his sister Helen became a successful accountant. Richard Hartfield, by contrast, had climbed the corporate ladder through charm rather than exceptional skill, cultivating the appearance of success even when reality fell short. There was always an undercurrent of resentment when Dad spoke about Uncle Thomas. "Some people have everything handed to them," he'd say after family gatherings, loosening his tie in our car as we drove home. "Others have to work twice as hard for half as much." As a child, I'd felt sorry for my father, believing the world had been unfair to him. Now, I wondered how much of that narrative was his own creation. Mother had been a high school English teacher, respected in the community, but always yearning for more. She'd grown up in modest circumstances and married my father partly for the lifestyle he promised. When that lifestyle proved more illusion than reality, she became his willing partner in maintaining the facade. "Appearances matter, Eleanor," she told me countless times throughout my childhood. "People treat you according to how they see you." What I never realized was how deeply they believed that themselves, so deeply that they'd sacrifice their daughter's future to maintain the illusion. I remembered the summer I'd worked 3 jobs to save for a semester abroad in London during my junior year of college. 2 weeks before my departure, Dad had come to me with a crisis, a tax bill they hadn't anticipated, something that would affect the house if they couldn't pay it immediately. "Just a loan," he'd promised, eyes earnest. "We'll pay you back before you return from England." I'd given them every penny of my savings. Cancelled my trip. Took an extra class at the local community college instead. They'd never mentioned the money again, And when I'd finally asked 6 months later, Mom had seemed genuinely confused. But we needed that money, Eleanor. You wouldn't have wanted us to lose the house, would you? The semester abroad had been replaced by a photo of Mom and Dad in Bermuda, posted on Facebook with the caption, "Celebrating 30 years together." Sometimes you just need to splurge. I never made the connection. Never let myself see the pattern. Until now. The preparation. I spent 3 days gathering evidence before confronting them. 3 days of digging through statements, screenshots, and emergency transfers. My spreadsheet grew longer, each entry making my hands shake harder. The first day, I called in sick to work, something I'd never done before, not even when I had bronchitis last winter. I pulled out 5 years' worth of bank statements, credit card bills, loan documents, everything financial that connected me to my parents. The picture that emerged was staggering. Not just small indulgences here and there, but a systematic pattern of exploitation. The emergency medical expenses had funded a week at a luxury spa. The essential home repairs had somehow translated to new golf clubs and designer clothes. The care for an elderly neighbor had been a weekend getaway to a vineyard with their friends. All told, I'd given them over $130,000 in direct support. But that wasn't all. They'd opened credit accounts in my name, taken out loans I knew nothing about, created a trust fund using my identity. On day 2, I called Olivia. "I need to show you something," I said when she answered. "And you're not going to like it." We met at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. I watched her face as she looked through my evidence, watched the disbelief turn to confusion, then to anger. "This can't be right," she said, shaking her head. "They wouldn't. They couldn't." "Check your own accounts," I finally told her. "Check everything." An hour later, she called back, voice breaking. They took out loans in my name. 3 of them. For a timeshare in Florida I didn't even know they had. On day 3, I spoke with a financial advisor, then a lawyer. Both confirmed what I already knew. What my parents had done wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. Identity theft, fraud, financial abuse. That evening, I received a text from Mom. "Family dinner tomorrow. Don't be late." Perfect timing. The first confrontation, I arrived at 5:55 p.m., manila folder tucked under my arm. Olivia's car was already in the driveway, and I could hear laughter from inside. The sound made my stomach turn. For a moment, I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, trying to calm my racing heart. This house, the one I'd grown up in, the one I was now paying for, suddenly seemed like a stage set, a prop in the elaborate performance that was the Hartfield family dynamic. "You can do this," I whispered to myself. "You deserve better than this." "There's my workaholic," Mom called from the kitchen as I entered, just in time to help set the table. She looked so normal, so exactly like the mother I'd always known, hair perfectly styled, tasteful makeup, wearing the cashmere sweater I'd given her for Christmas. How could she stand there smiling at me, knowing what she'd done? I placed the folder on the counter. "Actually, I think we should talk first." Dad muted the TV. "What's wrong, princess? You look stressed." The childhood nickname that once made me feel special now rang hollow, a manipulation tool like everything else. "Don't call me that," I said, pulling out the first bank statement. "Want to explain these golf club charges?" The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. Mom's smile froze. "Or maybe these spa weekends." I continued, laying out more papers. "The ones you said were doctor's appointments." "Eleanor," Olivia interrupted, playing her part perfectly. "What are you doing? Showing our parents what $131,000 of emergency support looks like." I turned to Dad. "Including the inheritance from Uncle Thomas you never mentioned." His face went red. "That money was private." "Private?" I laughed, the sound harsh even to my ears. "Like the trust fund you set up in my name without telling me? Or the credit cards you opened using my information?" Mom stepped forward, wooden spoon pointed at me like a weapon. "How dare you come into our house with these accusations after everything we've done for you? Everything you've done for me." The words tasted like acid. "You mean lying to me, manipulating me, Using me as your personal ATM while I live in a showbox apartment? We raised you. Mom shrieked. Fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head. That's called being a parent, I replied coldly. It's not a debt I have to repay. Olivia stood up, her face pale but determined. Mom, Dad, I found the loans. The ones in my name. Why would you do that? Mom turned to her, switching tactics with practiced ease. Olivia, sweetie, your sister is having some sort of breakdown. You know how she gets, always so high strung. The inheritance, I cut in. Tell her about Uncle Thomas's inheritance. Dad stood up so fast his chair fell backward. That's enough. No, it's not enough. I slammed my hand on the table. 5 years. 5 years of working myself to death while you live it up on my dime. 5 years of guilt trips and manipulation. We are your parents. Mom screamed. Everything you give us is a drop in the bucket compared to what we deserve. The room went silent. Olivia's face drained of color. Even Mom seemed shocked by her own words, her hand flying to her mouth as if to push them back in. What you deserve, I repeated slowly. Well, let me tell you what's going to happen now. The money stops. All of it. The cards are canceled. The transfers end today. You can't, Dad started. I can, and I will. My voice was steady now, certain. And if you try to fight me on this, I'll take every piece of evidence I have to the police. Financial fraud isn't just immoral, it's illegal. Mom burst into tears, the fake, theatrical kind I'd seen 1,000 times. How could you do this to us? Your own parents. The same way you did it to me. I turned to Olivia. Check your credit report. Check everything. They're not who we thought they were. I grabbed my folder and walked toward the door. Behind me, chaos erupted. Mom wailed. Dad shouted. Olivia asked questions in an increasingly panicked voice. Eleanor, Dad's voice boomed. If you walk out that door, you'll. What? I turned back one last time. Cut me off. Guilt trip me? Gaslight me into submission? Those tricks don't work anymore. My hands didn't tremble as I opened the door. My voice didn't shake as I said my final piece. I'll be sending formal documentation of the financial separation. Any attempt to contact me that isn't through my lawyer will be considered harassment. I stepped into the cool evening air, letting the door close behind me on their protests. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. A text from Olivia. Just checked my accounts. Found weird transfers. Can we talk? Another buzz. Mom. You ungrateful child. After everything we've sacrificed. Then Dad. You're making a huge mistake. Family is everything. I started my car, hands steady for the first time in days. One last text came through from my coworker, Michael. Still on for coffee tomorrow? Yes, I typed back, and I have one hell of a story to tell you. As I drove away, I saw Mom and Dad in the rearview mirror, standing on the porch. They looked smaller somehow, less intimidating. 5 years of power over me broken by nothing more than the truth. My apartment may have been small, but that night it felt like a fortress. I poured a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and started a new document. Subject line: Notice of immediate financial separation. The real war was just beginning. At work, the support system. You look like you haven't slept in days, Michael said, sliding a coffee across the break room table. Still dealing with the family fallout? They're relentless. I showed him my phone. 37 missed calls since yesterday. I had to block their numbers. Good. You need boundaries. Michael Collins had been my colleague for 5 years, one of the few people who seemed to see beyond my exhausted exterior to the capable financial analyst beneath. A divorced father of one, he understood complicated family dynamics better than most. He'd been through a bitter divorce 3 years earlier when his ex-wife had cleaned out their joint accounts and disappeared for a weekend with her personal trainer. I'd helped him organize his finances afterward, and he'd never forgotten that kindness. Now, he was returning the favor with unwavering support. Have you told Caroline what's going on? He asked. She's been asking why you seem distracted. Caroline Weston was our department head. a formidable woman who'd built her reputation in a male-dominated industry through sheer competence and razor-sharp instincts. I'd always admired her, but kept a professional distance, not wanting my personal problems to affect how she viewed my work. Before I could answer, my desk phone rang. The reception desk. Miss Hartfield, your father is here to see you. My heart stopped. Tell him I'm in a meeting. He says he'll wait. I peeked through the office blinds. Dad stood in the lobby, wearing his expensive golf shirt like armor. Several coworkers were already staring. I'll handle this. Michael stood up. Stay here. No. I grabbed my phone. I need to deal with this myself. The lobby fell silent as I approached. Dad's face was red, his angry face, the one that used to terrify me as a kid. I felt a momentary flash of that old fear, the instinctive flinch, the tightening in my chest, but pushed through it. I wasn't a child anymore. Outside, I said quietly. Now. He followed me to the parking lot, practically vibrating with rage. How dare you ignore our calls? Your mother hasn't slept. How dare I? I turned on him. How dare you show up at my workplace? How dare you harass me after what you've done? We are your parents. Stop saying that like it's a blank check. My voice rose. You stole from me. You lied to me. You manipulated me for years. You told me you needed help. You're being utterly ridiculous. You needed golf clubs and spa days and luxury vacations. I pulled out my phone. Should I call the police? Show them the fraudulent accounts? His face changed, fear replacing anger. You wouldn't. Try me. One more scene at my office, one more ambush, and I'll burn everything down. He stepped back, hands raised. This isn't over. Yes, it is. I turned away, then paused. By the way, I'm meeting with Aunt Helen tomorrow. Should be an interesting conversation. The color drained from his face. I watched something crumble behind his eyes, not remorse, but the realization that his carefully constructed world was falling apart. Back inside, Caroline was waiting by my desk. My stomach dropped as I followed her to her office, preparing my resignation speech. Instead, she closed the door and said, "Tell me everything." So I did. The whole ugly story spilled out: 5 years of financial abuse, the manipulation, the fraud. She listened without interrupting, taking notes in a sleek leather-bound notebook. First, she said when I finished, "I'm giving you a raise. You've been doing senior-level work while dealing with this nightmare." What? Second, "I'm having security block your parents. No more surprise visits." Tears burned my eyes. "Thank you." Third, she slid a business card across the desk. "This is my personal attorney. Use him." I looked down at the embossed card. James Foster, attorney at law. One of the top legal names in the city. I can't afford. He owes me a favor. Caroline cut me off. And Eleanor? What you're doing takes courage. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. My phone buzzed. Olivia, can we meet? Found something bad. I showed Caroline the message. She nodded. Go. Take the rest of the day. And Eleanor? Document everything. With Olivia, the deepening betrayal. We met at a coffee shop after work. My sister looked different, smaller, scared. She'd always been the more sensitive one, the peacemaker in the family. Now, she slid a folder across the table, her hands shaking. I did what you said. Checked everything. Her voice was barely above a whisper. They took out loans in my name. 3 of them. Jesus, Olivia. That's not all. She lowered her voice further, leaning across the table. Aunt Helen called me. Asked about Dad's inheritance. The real amount. My coffee went cold as she explained. The inheritance from Uncle Thomas wasn't small. It was substantial. 6 figures substantial. All hidden, all spent while I worked myself to exhaustion supporting them. How could they do this to us? Olivia asked, tears streaming down her face. All those times they said they were struggling. They were lying to our faces. I reached across the table and took her hand. They've been doing this our whole lives. Live. We just never saw it clearly before. There's more, a voice said. We looked up to find Aunt Helen herself standing at our table. Tall, silver-haired, with the same sharp blue eyes as our father, but none of the deceit. She'd always been the family member I admired most. She sat down, face grim. Your father didn't just hide his inheritance, she said without preamble. He created a fake trust in your name, Eleanor, used it to hide money from me, money that was supposed to be split between all the siblings after Thomas died. The pieces clicked together. The mysterious transfers, the hidden accounts, the elaborate web of lies. I'm pressing charges, Helen announced, against both of them. The question is, will you help me? Olivia started crying. I reached for her hand. Yes, I said firmly. It's time they face consequences. My phone lit up. Mom calling from a new number. I silenced it and looked at my aunt. Tell me everything you know. With Aunt Helen, the revelation. That evening, I canceled dinner with Michael and met Helen at her house. She had 3 decades worth of financial documents spread across her dining room table. Your father didn't just hide Thomas's inheritance, she explained, pulling out a thick folder. He hid mine too. Used your identity to create accounts, move money around. Classic fraud scheme. How much are we talking about? I asked quietly. She named a figure that made my head spin. I'm pressing charges, she announced, her voice flat and final. Criminal charges. Will you testify? In a heartbeat. Helen's study looked like a forensic accountant's war room, which was essentially what it was. Financial records dating back 3 decades covered every surface, sticky notes and red string connecting documents in a complex web of deceit. I always knew Richard was secretive about money, Helen said, handing me a cup of tea. But after Thomas died last year, things didn't add up with the inheritance distribution. I sipped the tea, letting its warmth spread through my chest. Helen had always been the practical one in the family, precise, methodical, and unflinchingly honest. Her geometric framed glasses and silver bob completed the picture of efficiency. The trust documents are what really concern me, she continued, pulling out a stapled packet. This trust was created in your name, but the signature. Eleanor, did you sign this? I examined the document. The signature was a reasonable approximation of mine, but definitely not my handwriting. No, never seen it before. That's forgery, Helen said simply. Criminal fraud, as she laid out more evidence. A picture emerged of my father that was both shocking and somehow not surprising at all. Richard Hartfield had spent his entire life maintaining appearances at any cost. When his own finances couldn't support the lifestyle he felt entitled to, he turned to increasingly deceptive methods to bridge the gap. First, it was small loans from family that he never repaid, Helen explained. Then some creative accounting at work. Nothing they could prove, but enough that the unfair dismissal he told you about was actually a quiet agreement to leave before they conducted a full audit. I thought about the inheritance again. And Uncle Thomas's money? Thomas left equal shares to all 3 of us siblings, plus smaller amounts to you and Olivia. Your father was the executor, which gave him temporary control. He used that position to redirect funds, create the fraudulent trust, and essentially steal from all of us. My phone buzzed with an email from Mom. If you don't call us by tomorrow, we're going to the police. We'll tell them everything. I showed Helen the message. She raised an eyebrow. They're getting desperate. Forward that to my lawyer, please. I did, then typed a response to my mother. Please do. Explain the fraud, the identity theft, the fake trusts. I have documentation for everything. Driving home, I spotted Dad's car following me. I called the police. Yes, he's still following me. No, I don't feel safe. Yes, I'll hold. He finally turned away when I pulled into the police station. The officer took my statement, added it to my growing file. We can arrest him for stalking, she offered. Not yet, I replied, handing her my documentation. I want to build a complete case first. At home, I poured a glass of wine and opened my laptop. Time to write the hardest email of my life. Dear Mom and Dad, I've documented everything. The fraud, the theft, the harassment. Every lie, every manipulation, every illegal act. I have proof of all of it. Stop following me. Stop calling. Stop emailing. The next documented incident goes straight to the police. You taught me that family is everything. You were wrong. Peace is everything, and I choose peace. Do not contact me again. All debts, emotional and financial, are hereby settled. Goodbye, Eleanor. I hit send, then blocked their final email addresses. My phone buzzed one last time. Michael. Rain check on dinner? Yes, I replied. And Michael, thank you for everything. I slept soundly that night, for the first time in weeks. Tomorrow I'd deal with the fallout. Tomorrow I'd face whatever new schemes they might devise. But tonight I was free. And freedom, it turned out, felt a lot like peace. Building the case, the IRS takes fraud very seriously, the agent said, flipping through my documentation, especially when it involves identity theft and hidden trusts. I sat in the federal building, watching her highlight sections of my report. 3 hours of detailed explanation, bank statements, and evidence. Your parents were thorough, she noted. They were greedy, I corrected her. And they got sloppy. It had been 2 weeks since I'd sent that final email to my parents. 2 weeks of systematic dismantling of their financial web. I'd canceled every credit card, closed every account, documented every transaction. With Helen's help, I'd compiled evidence for the IRS, the district attorney, and the state fraud division. My phone buzzed. Olivia. Mom's having a meltdown on Facebook. Check your email. The post was exactly what I expected, a long, tearful narrative about ungrateful children and aging parents, how they sacrificed everything, how I abandoned them in their time of need. Perfect, I muttered, forwarding it to my lawyer. What's perfect? Michael asked, appearing at my desk with coffee. They're doing my job for me. I showed him the post. Every public statement, every accusation, it's all evidence. Speaking of evidence, he slid a USB drive across my desk. Security footage from the parking lot. Your dad's daily visits, time-stamped and documented. I added it to my growing file. You're too good to me. I'm just getting started, he grinned. Dinner tonight? Before I could answer, Caroline appeared. Eleanor, Aunt Helen is here. My aunt stormed into my office, face flushed with anger. They did it again. Look at this. She handed me a stack of papers. More trust documents, more fraud, more lies. But these were different. These showed exactly how they hid money from her, using my identity as cover. I'm suing them, she announced. Criminal and civil charges. The DA is very interested in this case. My phone rang. Olivia again. Dad just got served legal papers from Helen's lawyer. He's losing it. Stay away from the house, I warned her. This is just the beginning. Flashback, a pattern of control. When I was 16, I'd won a prestigious summer internship at a local financial firm, my first step toward the career I'd eventually pursue. The position was unpaid but offered invaluable experience and connections. I'd been ecstatic when I received the acceptance letter. Absolutely not, Dad had said when I told him. You need to get a real job this summer. One that pays. But Dad, this is an amazing opportunity. It could help me get into any college I want. College is years away, he dismissed. We need you to contribute to the household now. I ended up working at the local grocery store that summer, handing over most of my paycheck to my parents for household expenses. Later, I learned those expenses had funded a weekend trip to Las Vegas that they'd taken while I stocked shelves and bagged groceries. It was the same pattern, again and again. My opportunities sacrificed for their comfort. My future traded for their present enjoyment. And always, I was made to feel selfish for even questioning it. Family helps family, Mom would say. You wouldn't want us to struggle, would you? The grocery store job had been just one instance. There had been the scholarship I turned down to attend a local college so I could live at home and save money that somehow never stayed saved. The job offer in Chicago I declined because your father needs you here. The apartment with friends I'd backed out of because it would break your mother's heart if you moved so far away. Each decision made under the weight of obligation, each sacrifice accompanied by the unspoken promise that someday it would be my turn to receive rather than give. That day never came. The legal process begins. The total amount was $1,312,047, the accountant said, sliding the report across his desk. That's not including interest or the fraudulent credit accounts. I stared at the number. 5 years of my life reduced to a dollar amount. And you're sure about the trust fund? I asked. Created in my name without my knowledge or consent? That's fraud? He tapped the paper. Clear as day. I left his office with a certified letter and headed straight to Attorney James Foster's building. The receptionist eyed me suspiciously. I'm here about the Hartfield Family Trust, I said sweetly. Richard Hartfield's daughter. 10 minutes later, I was sitting across from Foster, watching him squirm. I can't discuss private client matters. Funny, I interrupted, because I'm supposedly the beneficiary of this trust, yet I've never seen any paperwork. His face twitched. Perhaps you should discuss this with your father. Perhaps you should discuss it with the Bar Association. I leaned forward, because helping clients commit fraud seems problematic. The color drained from his face. As Caroline had predicted, he folded quickly when confronted with evidence of his complicity. By the end of our meeting, he provided valuable information about the trust creation and my father's instructions to keep it hidden from me. Miss Hartfield, he said as I gathered my things to leave, just tell me one thing. Was there really an inheritance from Thomas Hartfield? His silence after my explanation was answer enough. I texted Olivia. Family brunch tomorrow. Don't tell them you're coming. The final confrontation restaurant scene. Sunday morning, I arrived at our parents' favorite restaurant. Mom and Dad were already seated, looking smug. Finally ready to apologize, Mom asked as I sat down. Actually, I placed the accountant's report on the table. I'm here to present an invoice. Dad's face darkened. Now listen here. No, you listen. I opened the folder. 5 years. $1,312,047 plus interest. We're your parents. Parents don't steal from their children. I pulled out more papers. Parents don't create fake trusts. Parents don't hide inheritances. Mom's face went white. Who told you? Olivia appeared beside the table, right on cue. And Aunt Helen told me. The shock on their faces at seeing us united was almost worth the months of stress and betrayal. Almost. This is ridiculous, Dad sputtered. We don't owe you any. Actually, I cut in. According to the law, you do. Fraud is fraud, Dad, even when it's family. Mom grabbed her water glass. You ungrateful little. Don't, Olivia warned. Don't you dare make a scene. You're both conspiring against us. Mom's voice rose. After everything we've sacrificed. Sacrificed? I laughed. Like the spa weekends, the golf membership, the hidden inheritance, that money was ours. Dad slammed his fist down. The trust fund wasn't. I turned to Olivia. Show them. She pulled out her phone, played the recording of James Foster admitting everything. Mom's face contorted with rage. You recorded him? I smiled. Every admission, every lie, every fraud. Mom stood up so fast her chair fell backward. You think you can threaten us? No threats, I said calmly. Just consequences. She grabbed the table edge. You little. What happened next unfolded in slow motion. Mom lunging forward, the table flipping, water glasses shattering, other diners gasping. Mom standing there shaking with rage as restaurant staff rushed over. I think we're done here. I stood up, brushing water from my dress. You'll be receiving formal documentation from my attorney. If you do this, Dad called after us. You're no longer our daughters. Olivia turned back. No, we stopped being your daughters the moment you chose greed over love. Outside, she broke down crying. I held her tight, feeling strangely calm. What now? She whispered. Now. I pulled out an envelope. Now I mail them this. The envelope contained every transaction, every lie, every manipulation from the past 5 years. The cover letter read, Final Accounting, 2018 to 2023. Support contributions. They'll never pay it, Olivia said. They don't have to. I hugged her again. This isn't about money anymore. My phone buzzed. Michael. How'd it go? Table flipped dramatic, I replied. But we're okay. Another text came through from Caroline. Your office is ready. VP title looks good on the door. I showed Olivia the message. She smiled through her tears. They tried to keep us small, she said. They failed. We walked away from the restaurant, leaving behind the sounds of Mom's hysterics and Dad's threats. Behind us lay 5 years of manipulation and theft. Ahead lay freedom. The aftermath, the stalking. He's back again, our security guard said, pointing to the parking lot. Third time this week. From my new corner office window, I could see Dad's car idling near the entrance. 2 weeks of silence broken by his daily stalking routine. Want me to call the police? The guard asked. Not yet. Just document everything. My phone lit up. Mom's latest burner number. I blocked it without reading the message. 10 minutes later, my work email pinged with a message from an unfamiliar address. You're killing your father. He can't sleep. Please call us. Delete. Block. Repeat. Caroline knocked on my door. Your 10 a.m. is here. Also, your father is lurking in the parking lot. Yeah, I know. She frowned. This is harassment, Eleanor. You need to take legal action. I'm gathering evidence. I gestured to my growing documentation file. Building a case. Build faster. She handed me a coffee. Before this escalates. That afternoon, Michael caught me in the break room. Dinner tonight? You need a distraction. I need a restraining order, I muttered, but agreed to meet him. My phone buzzed. Olivia. Emergency. Can you come over? More discoveries. I found Olivia sitting on her apartment floor, surrounded by papers. They refinanced my car, she said, voice shaking, without telling me. Used my information to take out a loan. When? Last month. She held up bank statements. They needed money for their casino weekend. The one right after you cut them off. I sat beside her, examining the documents. We need to report this. Already did. She wiped her eyes. But that's not why I called. Look at this. She opened her laptop, showed me a series of emails. My stomach dropped as I read them. They created a fake trust, she explained, in your name. Used it to hide money from Aunt Helen. But they got sloppy. Left the documentation in their shared cloud drive. My hands shook as I scrolled through the evidence. Forward these to my lawyer. All of them. There's more. She pulled up another email. They're planning to claim elder abuse. Say you manipulated them into giving you money. They've been building this narrative for weeks. A cold laugh escaped me. Let them try. My phone rang. Aunt Helen. Are you sitting down? Because I just found something interesting in your father's financial records. The final decision, that evening, I canceled dinner with Michael and met Helen at her house. She had 3 decades worth of financial documents spread across her dining room table. Your father didn't just hide his inheritance, she explained. He hid mine too. Used your identity to create accounts, move money around. Classic fraud scheme. How much? I asked. She named a figure that made my head spin. I'm pressing charges, she announced. Criminal charges. Will you testify? In a heartbeat. My phone buzzed. An email from Mom. If you don't call us by tomorrow, we're going to the police. We'll tell them everything. I forwarded the email to my lawyer, then typed a response. Please do. Explain the fraud, the identity theft, the fake trusts. I have documentation for everything. No response. Driving home, I spotted Dad's car following me. I called the police. Yes, he's still following me. No, I don't feel safe. Yes, I'll hold. He finally turned away when I pulled into the police station. The officer took my statement, added it to my growing file. We can arrest him for stalking, she offered. Not yet. I handed her my documentation. I want to build a complete case first. That evening, I sat at my computer, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The post I was about to write had been brewing for weeks. To those who've been asking about my family situation, I began. I detailed everything, not names but facts. The financial abuse, the manipulation, the fraud. 5 years of sacrifice met with theft and lies. By the time I finished, my hands were shaking. Post it, Michael said softly from behind me. He'd come over with dinner, staying to provide moral support. They don't get to control the narrative anymore. I clicked share and watched the responses flood in. Other victims of financial abuse, people who'd been through similar situations, support, validation, understanding. Then, Eleanor, your mother's responding. Mom's reply was epic, pages of accusations, twisted facts, emotional manipulation. Each word dug her grave deeper. Send screenshots to the lawyer, Olivia texted. This is better than we hoped. Legal consequences begin. The next morning, Dad got served again, this time with IRS investigation papers. Mom's hysterical voicemail went straight to my evidence file. You think you can destroy us? She screamed. We're your parents. We delete, block, document. Caroline called me into her office. The board approved your promotion, and she slid over a paper, your raise, effective immediately. I stared at the number. More than enough to finally move to a better apartment, to start fresh. Thank you, I whispered. No, she said firmly. You earned this. All of it. My phone buzzed. James Foster. Your parents received the IRS notice. They're panicking. Want to negotiate. No deals. I texted back. Let them face the consequences. Olivia met me for lunch, bringing more evidence she'd found. They're trying to hide assets, she explained, moving money around. But it's too late. Way too late, I agreed, forwarding everything to the IRS agent. That afternoon, I received an email from Aunt Helen's lawyer. The subject line, Case Update Urgent. Inside was a detailed list of every fraudulent transaction, every hidden account, every lie. The evidence was overwhelming. We're filing criminal charges, the lawyer wrote. The DA is confident. I forwarded the email to my parents' last known address with one line, You reap what you sow. Michael found me in the break room, staring at my phone. You okay? Better than okay. I showed him the DA's email. It's really happening. They're going to face consequences. Good. He took my hand. Now, about that dinner. My phone buzzed one last time. Olivia. Mom and Dad just got the D's letter. They're crying about family loyalty and forgiveness. I typed back. Too little, too late. The war wasn't over, but for the first time, victory felt certain. Not just legal victory, emotional victory. Freedom from their manipulation, their guilt, their control. I looked at Michael, still holding my hand. Dinner sounded perfect. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. The resolution guilty on all counts, the DA announced in her office. They're accepting a plea deal. I sat between Olivia and Aunt Helen, watching my parents' carefully constructed world crumble through a conference call. The terms? Helen asked. Full restitution, probation, and the DA paused. They have to admit everything publicly. My hands shook as I signed the agreement. 5 years of lies ending in black and white truth. They're broke, Olivia whispered. IRS froze everything. Good. I closed the folder. They can finally live within their means. Outside the DA's office, my phone rang. Michael. Your office is packed, ready for the move tomorrow. Almost. I smiled, thinking of my new apartment. No more budget constraints, no more guilt-driven sacrifices. Just one more stop to make. I drove to my parents' house one last time. The yard was overgrown. The luxury car was gone. A far cry from the facade they maintained with my money. Mom opened the door, looking older than I remembered. Eleanor, don't. I held up my hand. I'm here to say this once. It's over. Dad appeared behind her, it deflated without his expensive clothes and arrogant smile. We can explain. Explain the fraud? The theft? The lies? I pulled out an envelope. Save it for your probation officer. We're your parents, Mom tried. No. I handed her the envelope. You're criminals who happened to give birth to me. There's a difference. Inside the envelope was a letter detailing every penny they stole, every lie they told, every manipulation they attempted. At the bottom, in bold, do not contact me again. All debts, emotional and financial, are hereby settled. You can't just. That started. I can, and I have. I turned to leave, then paused. By the way, Aunt Helen revised her will. Guess who's not in it anymore? Their faces crumpled as the final piece of their entitlement crashed down. Back at my apartment, Michael helped me pack the last box. You're really doing this. Moving on. I taped the box shut. Yes. Finally. Epilogue is 6 months later, last box, Michael announced, setting it down in my new living room. Though I still think you should have hired movers after everything. I shook my head. I needed to move every box myself. Make it real. My phone buzzed. Olivia, sending a photo of our parents' house with a for sale sign out front. Their downsizing isn't optional anymore, not with the restitution payments and legal fees. They're moving to a rental, she texted. Dad's furious about having to work retail at his age. Karma. I typed back, then set my phone aside to help Michael unpack. We were arranging books when Caroline called. Turn on the news, Channel 7. There they were. My parents on screen, making their court-mandated public statement. Mom looked small without her expensive clothes. Dad's shoulders slumped as he read their confession. We apologize for the financial fraud and emotional manipulation of our daughters. Michael muted the TV. You don't need to watch this. Yes, I do. I unmuted it. I need to hear them say it. We accept full responsibility for our actions. My phone lit up with messages from family members who finally saw the truth. Some apologized for not believing me. Others shared similar stories of manipulation. The doorbell rang, Aunt Helen with housewarming wine. Thought you might need this today, she said. We sat on my new couch, watching my parents' public humiliation, not with joy, but with quiet satisfaction. The trust paperwork is finalized, Helen said. Everything's in your name now, legally and properly this time. Another text from Olivia. Mom's asking if we'll visit them in their new place. Your choice, I replied. I'm done. Me too, she sent back. Finally free. Michael ordered dinner while I unpacked my home office. Between boxes, I found the original spreadsheet, my first documentation of their fraud. It felt like a lifetime ago. That evening, after everyone had left, I stood on my new balcony. The city lights blurred below, full of possibility. My phone showed one last message from an unknown number. We're sorry. We know it's too late, but we're sorry. I deleted it without responding. Some bridges should stay burned. Michael texted, breakfast tomorrow? Yes, I replied. New day, new traditions. I looked around my apartment. No more budget constraints, no more guilt, no more sacrificing my peace for people who never deserved it. The final box sat unopened, labeled family photos. I picked it up, walked to the trash. Goodbye, I whispered and letting it fall. I stepped onto my balcony, feeling the night air. Below, a moving truck took away the last of my parents' stolen luxuries. Above, stars shone on my hard-earned peace. Some people say revenge doesn't bring healing. They're wrong. Sometimes revenge is just another word for justice. Sometimes burning bridges lights the way forward. I'd earned this view, this peace, this freedom, and I was never giving it back. My phone buzzed one final time. Olivia. We did it, sis. We're finally free. Yes, we are. Free to live, free to thrive, free to be ourselves without guilt or manipulation. I looked out over the city, my city now. Tomorrow would bring work, success, love, peace, all the things they tried to take, all the things I took back. The night wrapped around me like a promise. This is what victory feels like. This is what peace feels like. This is what freedom feels like. And it feels like home.